Hi everybody. Caregivers this week are asking how to do the hard stuff, how to make the hard decisions when guilt or emotions get in the way. If you're a caregiver, you know that you do a lot of hard things and you gain a lot of skills that you never imagined you would have to do. The hard stuff may be having a difficult conversation with an aging parent or a sibling about your parent's health. The hard stuff may be making a decision to move an elderly parent to a care community because there are other considerations like financial matters that need to be solved, like a Medicaid spend down that takes 2 or 3 years. If you are the person with health problems or memory loss, the hard stuff for you may be figuring out a plan for your care, not only today, but 3 years or 5 years into the future. The hard stuff may be writing up an estate plan, medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, your living will, your will or trust, that the person you appoint can implement when you no longer have the memory or the ability to care for yourself. The problem with all of these hard stuff actions and hard stuff decisions is that guilt or emotions get in the way. So how do guilt and emotions impact these decisions to do the hard stuff? Stay with me while I talk about 4 things in this video. The first one is how to understand when a problem or a question is more complicated than it appears on the surface. If you're a caregiver or you're managing your health, you probably have run into this. Number 2, we're going to talk about how caregiver guilt and emotions impact doing the hard stuff, making the hard decisions. Number 3, we're going to talk about why waiting to deal with these uncomfortable, hard stuff decisions may not make it any easier. And last 4, we're going to talk about the benefits of just getting in there and getting whatever it is going and moving forward, even if you feel uncomfortable, you feel emotional, or there's a lot of guilt about having to do this hard stuff thing. If this is your first time on my channel, I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker who helps adults and caregivers and people managing health problems work through all of the health, the financial, the legal, the family aspects, the relationships of caregiving. You can learn more about me and my professional experience by scrolling below. There's links to my website. You can schedule a one-to-one consultation. My bio is there, links to my podcast, The Caring Generation, courses on my website, a lot of information. Please do like this video, follow my channel, share these and other videos, and please comment, even if only to say thank you for the video. One little thank you makes a big difference in helping caregivers and other people around the world find their way here to these videos. So, let's start with number 1. How to understand when a problem or a question is more complicated than it appears on the surface. And this is kind of the good one that falls into that category of we don't know what we don't know until we realize we don't know it, and then we have to deal with it, and then it becomes this hard stuff problem. So to look at this, I found a simple math problem. So, sports, right? Baseball and a bat cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Well, the easy answer, the ball costs 10 cents. That's the wrong answer. The correct answer is the ball costs 5 cents. So how do you get there? Well, if you go with the first answer, the ball cost 10 cents, then the bat would cost $1.10, making the total $1.20, which is 10 cents more than the $1.10 originally mentioned. The correct answer is that if the ball cost 5 cents, that makes the bat cost $1 more, $1.05. 5 cents and $1.05 equals $1.10. So what does that simple example show? It shows that sometimes it's really easy for us to just jump to an easy answer. We don't give much thought to the question, right? We just question answer. We go right there. But what that means is sometimes we jump to the wrong conclusion, or we jump to the wrong problem. And then doing that causes more problems down the road. So let me use a simple example to help this make sense. I was talking with a caregiver the other day about Medicaid spend down. So if you know anything about Medicaid spend down, basically you have to spend your assets down. That's why it's called spend down, to qualify. Well, the caregiver understood the concept of I have to spend down all this money to qualify to get to this level. Now, what the caregiver didn't think about is that spending down to make a Medicaid application is different from qualifying. Putting an application through, it can take a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. Okay, so there's a time frame attached to this. And then receiving Medicaid services once you're approved can be another hurdle. So let's say that you want to place a loved one in a care community. Nursing homes may accept Medicaid but not have a long-term care Medicaid bed available. So there may be a wait list. So if you think that you are going to apply for Medicaid, get approved, and move your parent out of the house in 2 months, probably unrealistic. Now, let's look at the spend down. If you want to move your parent, or your parent has to move into an assisted living or a memory care community that takes Medicaid, most communities that do this require a 2 to 3 year spend down of private pay money before they will allow your parent to stay in that room or apartment on Medicaid. And add to this, some of those assisted living and memory care communities can have a wait list of 6 to 12 months for a Medicaid room. So, again, you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to apply for Medicaid, it's going to work out, or I'm going to spend down for Medicaid, it's going to work out. You have to plan years in advance to do this. Not that you can't do it at the last minute, but if you do it at the last minute, you're going to have a lot fewer options. So, while Medicaid may be this easy thing to understand, like the math problem, applying for, spending down, being approved, and using benefits can be a lot more complicated. If you're in any of these situations and you want to figure out the complications and all the steps and everything that's involved, there is a link below. You can schedule a one-on-one consultation with me. And these complications, these multiple steps, these timelines, apply to many aspects of caregiving. Healthcare, the financial, the legal part, navigating family relationships. So, number 2, how caregiving guilt, caregiver guilt, emotions play into doing the hard stuff and making hard decisions. Well, emotions, we all know we're up and down. When we make decisions from an emotional standpoint, we always don't make the best decision. Now let's talk about guilt. Where does guilt come from? And guilt is an emotion, so we're kind of combining the idea of guilt and emotions here. So for most people, guilt or emotional distress, right, is this gap between the way that we behave and our personal beliefs and our standards. And everybody experiences guilt and emotions on an ongoing basis. Some people, though, live more in guilt, and others maybe not so much. So when you look at why you feel guilty, what do you hear yourself saying? Do you hear yourself saying, oh, I have to do this. I must do this. Other people expect me to do this. If I don't do this, people are going to look at me badly or think I'm not doing a good job. So guilt relates to things that we feel that we have to do for a certain reason, or the way that we feel other people are going to look at us or approach us or interact with us. So if you're trying to figure out why you feel guilty, look at areas, or emotional, why you feel guilty or emotional. Let's combine that. Look at areas of your life that are difficult, that are challenging. Most of those are the hard stuff, right? The difficult things that we're like, oh, why do I have to deal with this? I don't want to deal with this. This is hard. I don't like this. Then look at what you tell yourself, and then what your standards and beliefs are about this difficult thing, right? Do you believe that it's going to be hard? If you're a caregiver, do you have this belief that, well, I should always help my mom or dad? But you don't add, like, to what extent should you help your mom or dad? So the question is, do I believe that I should help my mom or dad? And what does this mean? Does this mean that I put their needs first and my needs are on the bottom of the pile? Does helping mom or dad mean that it's okay if I get sick and if the stress and the emotion and the guilt causes me all kinds of health problems? That's okay because mom and dad are the priority. Does it mean that I should help mom and dad even if I have to give up my career and my job that financially supports me, and my career and my job that contribute to my retirement? Does it mean that I must care for mom and dad even if it ruins my marriage, even if I have to get divorced, even if I ignore my kids and my kids suffer, even if I have to do things that are not good for me? Do you say, well, I should never let anyone down? So all of these beliefs and standards, right, that we apply to ourselves, they can be good or they can be bad. They can also cause us a lot of problems and a lot of emotional distress and physical distress and financial distress and everything else. A lot of these beliefs come from ourselves. They come from our culture, our family expectations. So when you're thinking about, I got to do the hard stuff, I have to make these decisions, figure out what you believe and then bring that down and say, well, how logical is this? Is my duty to care for my mom or dad more important than my health, my job, my marriage, my family, my children, everything else? And how logical is that? When you begin to look at your standards or beliefs, you have to challenge yourself to say, gosh, is this logical? Am I thinking about this the right way? Is this good? And then you choose, right? I mean, if you want to give up everything in your life to care for your parents, that's your choice, right? If you don't think that's a logical thing to do, that's your choice. Neither is right or wrong. It's only what you believe is right or wrong for yourself. Here's an example. So I often hear caregivers say, oh my gosh, I hired an in-home care agency and it was so much work and the caregivers didn't show up and it didn't work out, so I never want to do that again because that just puts more work on me. They don't do things the way that I like. So how does that belief or standard hurt or help the caregiver? Well, just because you hired one agency doesn't mean like the next agency is not going to be good. And what did you learn in that first hiring process? Did you not give them direction? Did you not give them a list of things to do? Were you not specific enough? That might help you in managing the second care agency that you hire. And honestly, does everybody have to do things the only way that you like? How does that relate to your standard or your belief that if people don't do things my way or they don't do things the way that I like, well, then they're out of my life. I'm not going to use them. Well, what does that do? That causes more work and more stress for you because you can't figure out how to manage or get along with other people and make situations work in a collaborative manner. That is a skill that any caregiver and any person can choose to do. So the question here is, do caregivers, do people with health problems, cause more problems for themselves because they have these standards that only they can live up to? Do caregivers and people with health problems judge other people even though they don't want to be judged themselves? And where do these patterns come from? Are they coming from your aging parent that you are caring for that has instilled these beliefs in you, these expectations in you that, you can never live up to your parents' standards, so nobody else can live up to your standards? Is this kind of like a generational thing that passes down and down that when you think about it might be a little crazy? So do you see how these beliefs and standards that we have for ourselves can work for us or against us? So you have a decision to make. You can hold to your standards that nobody can possibly meet, or you can become a little flexible and focus on how to work with other people to accomplish things so that you're not having to do so much work. And in the scheme of this, realize that, we all think that we have to work so hard, right? But it's okay to take a break. Taking that break actually gives your body a break, your mind a break. You actually can be more efficient and effective if you take a little bit of time for yourself. The other thing in all of this thinking about doing the hard stuff and dealing with guilt and emotions is, how often do you ask other people for their opinions instead of relying on yourself and your skills and your abilities to solve the problem? Now, sometimes we do have to go to experts, to people who know more about a topic than we do. But then you're getting factual advice, right? Instead of asking a friend how they feel about this, and that friend has no experience with this whatsoever. They're just giving you emotional advice. So the more that you ask other people who give you emotional advice or advice based on their standards or beliefs, you're just piling more standards and more beliefs and more anxiety and more guilt and more emotions on yourself, right? So you have to figure out who you're asking for help. And then these people over here who are giving you their standards, their beliefs, and their emotions may not be happy if you don't take their advice, where an expert over here is going to give you the pros and cons. The expert has no vested interest in whether you do A or B. Those are your choices. The expert realizes that you have choices to make. So when I talk to people in my one-on-one consultations, I go through and I say, well, this seems like this is the situation and the problem. You have all these options. So what you want to decide is what's most important to you. And a lot of times I do talk about planning for the worst case scenario so that maybe it doesn't happen. Or if it does happen, then you have a plan to sequentially work through that so you're not making rush decisions or decisions based on stress, and then you make the wrong decision and you go down that path. So a solution to not really knowing what the problem is or all the complications or the details of that problem is to seek out experts or people who can help you break down these problems into smaller little solvable pieces that you can work through yourself without having to ask other people who are going to lump emotions on it or lump their standards on it and just kind of bury you in more guilt and emotions. Because when you can solve smaller parts of a problem by yourself, then what happens? You gain confidence. You reduce that gap between all the guilt and all the emotions and the standards and the beliefs, yours and other people. Number 3. Why waiting to do the difficult stuff to make difficult decisions does not make life easier. Question, when is it easier to solve small problems? When they're small and they don't take as much effort, or when it's easy, right? When things are easy, we just do it. When things are hard, we may procrastinate or put it off. So when you allow this little problem to grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, the problem is it's a big problem and it's going to take more time, and maybe you're not even sure how to solve the problem. Simple example. You got this little noise in your car, and your car is still working, so you're like, well, I'm just going to ignore it until something happens. Well, then one day your car doesn't start, and you take it into the mechanic, and he's like, oh man, this is $1,000 repair. How long has this been going on? If you would have come in 6 months ago, we could have fixed it for $100. Life is like that. Being a caregiver, I know you have a lot of decisions, a lot of difficult decisions, a lot of hard stuff decisions. If you put them off, they're not going to get easier. They're just going to weigh heavier and heavier on your mind and make you feel more stressed and more uncomfortable and more emotional and more guilty. Waiting to make decisions can also mean that some choices that you would have had before are no longer available because you've passed a time frame, or you've passed some point where a health problem is no longer addressable or solvable. It's just going to get worse. An example is mom or dad with memory loss who didn't want to admit that they had memory loss, or maybe they were a little forgetful and they didn't go to the doctor, and now the memory loss is like really advanced. And you as the kids come in and you're thinking, oh, we got to get them to make their estate plan, right? Choose a power of attorney, get their living will done, get their will or trust done. Well, you go to an attorney and the attorney's like, I'm not sure your parents have the ability to do this. They can't exactly understand what I'm talking about. Well, that time frame from early memory loss to memory loss where people are considered incapacitated took away your ability to do normal estate planning. Now the only choice is you got to go to court and get guardianship or conservatorship. That can be more expensive, it can be time consuming, your family members can totally disagree about that. It can be super emotionally distressing for your mom or dad. All of this could have been taken care of a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But nobody wanted to do the hard stuff. Nobody wanted to talk about memory loss and the progression of memory loss and all of that. It just seemed too hard, and now it's really hard. Sometimes there is just no going back to say, oh my gosh, I should have done that. Why didn't I do that? You can beat yourself up about it, but that's not going to do any good. You're dealing with today and the hard stuff decisions from today. So number 4, and this is like the bright spot in all of this, let's talk about the benefits of just getting in there and doing the hard stuff. Getting whatever it is that makes you feel stressed out or uncomfortable or emotional or guilty. Just getting it done, right? Let's be honest. Nobody likes to have uncomfortable conversations, but it's a learned skill. You can get really good at having uncomfortable conversations, and then they become less uncomfortable. Nobody likes having to look at options that go against our personal standards or our beliefs of what we think we should or shouldn't do. That's hard. But in many cases with aging and health problems, and no matter how old you are, we're all going to be in this position. So the better you get at working through these problems when you're younger, the easier it's going to be when you are the age of your parents or your grandparents, because you'll have learned a lot about how to work through this, and you'll have your plans done, and you will be way ahead of the game. So you can look at it from that perspective. When you look at aging and health problems, you've got to consider the pros, the cons, the best case, the worst case scenario. What do you need to plan so that decisions later are easier, so that you have options in place? The benefit of dealing with the hard stuff and difficult problems and coming up with solutions is that this experience maybe helps you think a little more creatively. You're willing to give up those standards and beliefs and think outside the box. Look at options that you never would have considered before. Doing this also makes you a little more resilient. You have a problem, you get knocked down, you bounce back, you keep going. Because, as we all know, everything we plan does not work out the way we expect. That is just part of life. As much as we'd like to control everything and predict the future, it doesn't happen. We can do it to a degree, but not to 1,000% certainty. Dealing with the hard stuff helps us learn how to fail and work through the emotions of stress. And oh, why did I do that? No, I did the wrong thing. Well, every time we fail, it's an opportunity to learn. So when we look at dealing with the hard stuff, honestly, it is the pits, especially when hard stuff problems keep happening and happening and happening. It seems like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Well, is that happening because we didn't deal with the little problems when they were little problems? And we let all these little problems snowball. And now we have this huge snowball of problems, right? This mountain of problems that we're having a hard time dealing with. It's like this for everybody. But here's the thing. When things keep happening and you keep solving problems, you begin taking these problems in stride because you know that you know how to solve them. Or you know that you need to talk to somebody with more expertise to solve them. And then you're like, well, this happened today. I got this. I can deal with it. It's just one more thing I'm going to check off my list. Your confidence level rises when you solve problems. The fear and anxiety that you used to experience when something happened, oh my gosh, it lessens. It becomes more manageable. You react less emotionally. You're not as guilty anymore. Your patience level for dealing with all of the hard stuff grows. All of a sudden, all those little problems, big problems, just become one more thing that you check off a list because you deal with them as they arise. You don't keep putting them off for tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. So, if you're a caregiver stuck in limbo about doing the hard stuff or making hard decisions, identify the problem. Figure out what the question is. Look at all aspects of the problem, especially those that you can't see or you can't predict because you've never managed through this before. Then take that big problem, break it down into small pieces that you can solve by yourself. Let go of those standards and beliefs that say, I have to do this by myself. I don't have a choice. You do. Have honest discussions with the people that you care for about the choices. Spell out the options, 1, 2, 3, 4. And most of all, give up the need to convince your parent, your sibling, that there's only one way to do this. There's a lot of ways to do things. Timing can be a problem. Timing can be the tricky part. You may be ready for a solution while your parent or somebody else is just not there. This is when you choose between the solution, the emotions, and the standards that you have that tell you, well, I can wait. I can wait a month, I can wait 2 months, but I can't wait 6 months. And I can't wait a year. I'm not willing to do that. You have to set your own deadline for that decision and decide what you will do if a person continues to delay. And so delay is natural when we have big decisions to make. Maybe your parents deciding on, a health treatment. Do I go on dialysis? Do I start cancer treatment? Do I do this? Or do I move to a care community? These are big decisions that you don't want to make overnight, but you also may have other things that are pressing on the time frames. So there's context to saying, well, I'm willing to put up with this for 1 more week, or in 30 days we're going to make a decision. You are the only ones that can decide on what that timeline is for you. And everybody does work through decisions at their own pace. Some people take a little longer. Some people decide more quickly. But the bright spot in all of this hard stuff is that if you start now, if you start today, you're going to move closer to making decisions and working through the hard stuff and planning. I thank you all so much for being here. I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Information about me, my background, my professional experience is below. Ways to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me is also below. Please do like this video, follow my channel, comment, even if only to say thank you. Your thank yous and comments help other people find their way here. Thank you so much again for being here. I will see you all again soon in another video.